Welcome to Launch Code, a premier business podcast. Starring Evan Hafer, Matt Best, and Jared Taylor.
Welcome. I'm your host for this episode of Launch Code, joined by the very amazing, talented, creative Jack Mandaville.
Marhaba. That was way too nice.
I don't think so. I could go on for a bit. And to my right is the wonderful Omar Avila. Welcome.
Whoa.
You're around a lot these days.
That got very formal. You mean crispy, right?
Crispy. Yeah.
Okay.
It's crispy. Crispy's here.
What, do you hate having me around?
Of course not.
That's what it sounded like.
No, you're just around a lot. It's good. It's a good thing. That's why,
And this was his day to get a break from me.
Yeah, I'll take a second. And, a lot of things are happening in San Antonio right now. Like, I kind of feel like it's the first Lord of the Rings movie, and we're all coming together for a great journey. Like, everybody's around. Like, Jack, you're moving to...
I'm moving to San Antonio. I'm pretty much here, yeah.
Yeah, you're here.
I'm not on the payroll at BlackRifle, though. I'm just a hanger around.
Well... You're kind of like a hot chick.
Yeah. You got to have a round.
That's like the nicest thing anyone said to me today.
And then Crispy moved. Crispy was up in Austin and moved a little bit farther south. And is close. And we all love having you around. So it's good. And this is an all veteran panel for this. And what we kind of wanted to talk about and bring value to you guys on this one was just kind of some of the things that we've learned and some of the things that have helped us along the way, transitioning out of the military and coming back into the real world, so to speak. And Jack, I'll have you go through like kind of when you got out of the mill and what was some of the things that you started doing right off the bat.
Yeah, so before, whatever you want to call this, what we operate in, this vet space, this patriot space, whatever it's called, before I got into that probably around 2012, 2013, and it looked a lot different back then than it does now.
Sure.
But for 6 years before that, I lived the complete, life of a guy who got out of the military and was, leaving the military and going into a complete civilian phase. And I made every possible mistake during that time frame as far as transition goes. And, I've done some speaking engagements, and I've written some articles about that period of transition, and I base it off of all the mistakes that I made. So when I got out of the military, in my head, and I've watched a lot of veterans go through this. In my head, I was like, I was an NCO. I had this much responsibility attached to me. Like I was responsible for this much equipment, these lives, yada, yada, yada. I'm gonna walk right back into civilian life and own the place, and nobody cares. And it took me years to finally let that sink in. So I applied for jobs that I was totally unqualified for. I assumed that I was going to be put into leadership positions because I was a 22-year-old NCO. I did everything. Out of necessity, I worked at a gas station was my first job. I was a delivery driver for a year. I was a student, and I excelled well in school because the GI Bill pays for you to go to school. And
you got that big brain.
Yeah, I got that brain, man. I don't have the. I'll tell you what, though. As far as being a student, I have to put work into being a student. I like I like academia, but the actual the work part of it was difficult for me. I had to actually try. And then I worked in the oil field for almost 2 years, and I did all. I started out as a welder's helper. I did flowbacks. I was a roustabout. I kind of did everything around there. Now, my goal was to always be a writer and to get paid to write. So it was right around that time that I started, the Duffel blog came up. I was one of the early Duffel blog writers. At that time, there was a blog, which was one of the more popular blogs at the time, called The Rhino Den, which was powered by Ranger Up. And I ended up moving out to North Carolina. I worked for Ranger Up for 4 years. So that's how I ended up getting paid to be creative for a living, but I took like the worst possible route.
Now, was that a very conscious decision as far as like you had been doing the stuff in the oil field for so long, and you're like, I need to change something? Was there a culprit there that kind of got you thinking more like I want to be creative and use my brain more than my hands?
Well, as right around 2009 is when I started writing. I created my own blog. It was a bunch of comedic short stories. Basically, think like, I hate to make this comparison, but think I Hope They Serve Beer in Hell mixed with a war memoir. Basically, short stories about fun shit that happened at the barracks and on deployment.
Right.
My goal was to always get paid to write and be creative. So I did dumb shit. So when I started doing that, I was like, I'm going to be a writer. I got to commit to this. So I like quit all work, and I was like crashing on my buddy's couch for 9 months thinking I'm going to be Ernest Hemingway. But like all I was doing was drinking and writing like 500 words a day, right? I lacked the work ethic.
So that's what I was going to ask you. How much of a pay cut was it to go, like, just leave the oil field to do that? Because, I mean, everybody knows oil field pays pretty good. If
Crazy good.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is I finally went and worked in the oil field where I was getting paid I was working 12 to 14 hours a day. And then I'd come home. That's when my mindset switched about how I need to work and how I need to operate as a writer and in life in general. Like, I needed that income. So I was making crazy good money. That's also, and then I'd come home and write for like 4 hours at night. That's also around the time when I started getting things published, and like it started becoming serious. Like, oh my God, I could get paid to do this. And then Ranger Up reached out, and I took the job with them. I put a lot of work into my resume, and then moved out to North Carolina.
And that's a great feeling, going from I have words coming out of my brain and then getting it on screen or on paper, like becoming published. Like, that is a wonderful feeling.
It validates. It doesn't even validate how you feel. It validates the work you put into it.
Yeah.
And that was the most, like, I had this goal for, at that point, like 5 years, where I want to get paid to write. So I walked away from this oil job where at that point of the year, I was like going to make, well over $100,000. And I took a significant pay cut to move to North Carolina, of a state that I knew nothing about, and work in this crazy apparel industry. And it was worth it. It was worth it.
Yeah, and now, real quick, I'm gonna bring up Duffel Blog because I was a fan of that from the beginning.
Yeah,
it says satirical
Soldier
blog.
Yeah.
Marty started that, right?
It was Paul Soldier.
Paul Soldier.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you've got a lot of stuff up on, and you're a mainstay on Task and Purpose these days, correct?
Yeah, so I have a column with them 3 times a week. And when I say column, I'm not a Marty Scoveland. I'm not putting out deep stuff. I'm doing a slightly more cerebral thing than what I'm doing on like Instagram. They're allowing me to make these dumb, funny videos, and then 500 words to kind of add to them.
Right. That's I don't think you should discredit yourself necessarily, because I think that is just as important as these deep articles, especially these days. Like, people need to laugh more often.
And you can say whatever you want with satire.
Yes, and you're a purveyor of laughs, and the fucking world needs that these days.
I appreciate that.
Even before I met you, like, I've always told people, and I think it got to you, but I was like, Jack is, I think you're the Will Ferrell of our community. Like, you're at that, like, I've always been a fan of yours before we were even friends, before we started hanging out. I was just like, this guy is on a different level. Like, your videos and what you write, it's different than what everybody else is doing, and I really appreciate that. Like, that's just amazing.
I really appreciate that. I feel like I learned, I had a comedic mind, but I feel I learned my satirical mind, where I could mock whatever was going on from a safe distance, but but make a huge statement. I feel like I developed that with the Duffel Blog, because in the early days of the Duffel Blog, now everything's like real. It's not formal. It's still a fun place of great writers. But in the early days, we were all learning it together. We had to learn how to be at the Onion's level as far as how we constructed jokes and everything like that. So it was fun to be there in the early days because if you look at the early Duffel Blog articles, it's like, oh, it's funny, but it's not written well.
Yeah.
Where we really professionalized it and developed it, and we improved ourselves, and the writers, we all held ourselves to a higher standard. We held the jokes to a higher standard. So I really feel I gained my ability to mock things with the Duffel Blog.
Speak a little bit more about that development, just as far as like the learning process goes, because like when you get started in something like that, you don't know what you don't know, and yeah, you look back on your stuff, and you can say that was old, less quality, but why is that?
It's like anything. It's like any writing or being an actor or any type of art is no different from any other job out there. You have to start not knowing. And my ignorance, me sitting on my buddy's couch drinking my whiskey, thinking I'm Ernest Hemingway, I was so ignorant because I was wanting to live the lifestyle of a writer without doing the work that it takes to live in that world or to be successful in that world. You have to have stability in your life. You have to have a schedule. You have to be a professional with whatever you're doing. You can't think that you're this big swinging dick where people are just going to like your ideas or like you right off the bat. The day that I accepted that I didn't know shit and I needed to learn a craft and I needed to be aware of my mistakes is the day that things started going well for me.
Right. Kill all the ego.
You gotta kill the ego.
You can't have any of it. It has no place there.
No, and that's the thing. It's like I think artists are more tempted to have ego because they think the rules don't apply to them. You have to have the work ethic, and you have to have the mentality that you don't know shit.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll have a hard time with that one.
We know. So I specifically, and Dave, our podcast producer, put this in front of me. I actually hadn't seen it. But one of the articles that you wrote with Task and Purpose, it struck me, and it's something that I think a lot of people can take away from, and I want to touch on a couple of things here. But will you just kind of talk through what inspired this thing? And a brief overview of this is Jack titled this the Loser System, and it's an acronym that basically there's some bullet points, and it's got some good info in it as far as transition goes, coming out of being a veteran or being in the military to becoming a veteran, and some like guidelines.
Yeah, and I can't stress this enough. So I wrote this shortly before I left Ranger Up, and I had been, at that point I was like, I have my own thing going. I have a good professional thing going. I can do this. But this was written based off of having to look at old me. This was written off of the anger I had towards myself from the day I got out of the Marine Corps in 2006 till about 2011 or so, until I shaped up and started taking what I was doing seriously. So this is me not trying to lecture people. This is me saying, don't be Jack Mandaville. Don't be the loser who made every single mistake before he turned the switch. So I modeled this after I'd given a couple speeches about this to various bases around North Carolina, to transitioning troops, and so it's called the Loser System, and the first step is L. Listen to others. And that's basically what we were kind of talking about earlier for the most part. If you're going into a new environment, when you show up in the military, when you show up as a PFC, you've already been humbled at that point from basic training or boot camp or basic training, right? You've already been humbled. You already know that you don't know shit, right? So you're willing to listen to your NCOs, right? You have to apply that in the civilian world. It doesn't matter what you know from the military. It doesn't matter certain experiences you've had. If you're going into a new industry, even if you're going to be a cop, it's a whole different line of work than being a soldier, right? So you have to listen to others. You have to respect their perspective and their experience.
Yeah, and I'll add a little bit to that. I think just pay attention. Pay attention to details, because you can grow so much and you can learn so much and you can become so much better just paying attention.
Yeah.
And we get so wrapped up in what's going on in our own lives so often that we're just not looking at what's going around us. But as soon as we start doing that and you're like, oh wait, this person said this thing and they need that, like it's wanting to step in, listen to the needs that are around you and being like, I can help.
Yeah.
And I can fill that gap there. And that
earn respect.
That doesn't take a high level of intelligence to be able to do that.
No, it just takes a little bit of humility.
Yeah, exactly.
And work ethic.
And caring about what you're doing.
Yeah.
Go, Crispy?
I agree.
Go ahead on to,
Oh, okay. Operate like you know nothing. That's slightly similar to the first one, but I kind of to expand on that. It's for me, the point that I humbled myself, I said was around 2011. I can get into that later about what really clicked with me, but that was my rebirth. So tabula rasa, it says it on the article. That was the editor. That was not me. That's a Greek term. It's not Roman. So that's the editor's fault right there.
I love that you're yelling at the editor.
Yeah. Yeah, this was a year and a half ago.
Let's find that bastard.
They have me in contract now, so they can't do anything about it. And I don't think that editor's there anymore, so whatever. No, but it's a Greek phrase, tabula rasa, and it means, loosely translated, means blank slate. You have to have the mentality that you have a rebirth, and the great part of that is you have everything to learn. You have everything to learn. You have everything to see. You have all the experience and wisdom to gain now. The downfall of that is you have to humble yourself. You can take the basic lessons of leadership that you learned in the military and all that, but like the combat, the way people communicate, you have to drop that aspect of your life.
Yeah, and that doesn't matter if you were a grunt for 4 years or if you were a SF dude for 20. Like I was up in Sun Valley, Idaho at the beginning of this year, and we're doing a profile piece on this guy who was he was a SEAL for 20 years, and
They're the hardest ones to break.
yes,
Yeah,
and he is one fantastic human being. He's someone I admire and someone I look up to. His name's Sean Evangelista, and he runs this brand called 30 Seconds Out, which is like this artistic clothing. Like if you took street art, it's a wonderful thing. Check it out. But he also is a ski patrol for the original Ski Patrol Foundation.
Oh wow!
On the Sun Valley ski area up there, and so he had never skied before in his life. He had snowboarded in the past. He set this thing in his brain. He's like, I want to learn. I want to be a ski patrol guy.
Yeah.
I want to continue to serve.
And that's a young man's game.
It really is. And
Yeah.
he's, I believe he's 42.
Wow.
He's still super fit and everything, but like his body's he's been a SEAL for fucking 20 years.
Yeah.
And he spent one season skiing, tried out for the ski patrol, the next opportunity, made it, and now he is leading, like he's doing all the demo for avalanche control.
Oh wow!
Wow.
So he went from this nobody who had never skied before to this really established place, and he started talking about this stuff, and he's like, you have to embrace being the new guy again.
Yeah.
You have to
that's got to be hard at that point.
Exactly.
He was like he's part of the most coveted military group during our time.
Yeah, and he had this great attitude about everything he was doing, and he just wanted to learn again, and he wanted to coincide with these people he was working with, doing this great thing, helping others and making sure that people were enjoying their experiences on the mountain. And you look at that and you're like, well, if this guy can humble himself, that's something that we should all be looking at in every aspect of our lives every day. Like when Dave says something to me about like how to work the podcast, I'm like, yeah, absolutely, yes, They're like, we can't have us as a community subscribing to this life where we're like, I know everything because I did X, Y, Z in the past. I can do all of this. That's not how it works.
But it's. I mean, I found it hard, like to get out of that mentality because and it took me a while to understand it as well. But like when I started powerlifting, which was my outlet after being injured, you know, I walked in and I was like, all right, I'm going to beat everybody's ass, and I'm here to kick ass.
And that's a sport that takes skill.
Oh, and time and just years of practice. And I walked in and I thought I was hot shit, and it humbled me real quick. I mean, it took a little bit to understand. And then, you know, I realized that I needed the help of people that have been doing it for so long. So then I had like Brandon Lilly, which is just an amazing powerlifter in the community, and everybody knows who he is, kind of take me under his wing. He goes, listen, everything that you know and you did gets left behind on that door. And he goes, you check your ego at the door.
Yeah.
Because in here, he's like, you're nobody. And this sport doesn't give a shit who you are or where you come from. He's like, at the end of the day, you got to put in the time, the hard work, and then that's when you get there.
Yeah.
And it took me a while, but, you know, after so long, I realized it and then came above out of it, you know. So, yeah, that's dead on.
That's great, and it just shows that having that mentality is applicable in any type of endeavor in life, whether it's the arts, whether it's athletic, whether you're going to be sitting in a cubicle filing taxes, whether your goal is to be going to law enforcement, whether you want to be a doctor. It doesn't matter. Like you have to start from scratch.
Yeah.
Well, we kind of touched on S a little bit earlier, but S is sell your qualities, not your service.
Yeah. I'll never forget working at Ranger Up. I had to look at resumes every once in a while when we were hiring people, and we preferred to hire vets, obviously. And one guy, it was just poorly formatted. But I just remember him put, like, as far as like skills, it's the worst example, but this is so true. And it just said combat action ribbon. And I'm like, you know what was the most embarrassing part? I didn't know him. He was a little younger than me, but he came from the same battalion that I came from. So I'm like, no, bro, not you. But like combat action ribbon, who cares? The civilian world only cares about combat because they like the stories and it'll make for a great movie and all that. But it doesn't mean shit in the professional world.
Not at all.
Well, then I don't even think most people even know what that means.
Yeah,
No.
or what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So having a combat, even for this veteran apparel company where we want to hire veterans, he's going to the bottom of the list. That doesn't mean anything. Show your skills about things you did in the military that would be applicable to what we're doing here. Even if we're going to have you folding shirts, what did you do in the military that could make you good at folding shirts?
Yeah.
You're selling real world qualities about yourself. You're not selling the machismo. You're not selling these things that the military embraces. Your great PFT score, you're a good shooter, all this stuff. None of it matters.
No. Yeah. Well, that's one of the things that I realized when I started in the corporate world. And you know, they will ask me like, "What you do?" I was like, "Service." And they're like, "Oh, cool." So it got to a point where I was repeating myself for what I did, and I got to a point where I was like, I'm just not gonna say what I did, or if I was even in service. Like I was just like, I never touched on it because it didn't translate over to what I was doing. You know, I was doing corporate world stuff, and nobody really cared, and they shouldn't care. You know what I mean? It's just something that goes in your resume, and that's it.
Yeah, in line with that, I don't want to discredit military service whatsoever.
Oh, not at all.
Because,
No.
like
No,
when
no,
I
no,
look
no.
back on this, like I think of myself as a Swiss Army knife. Mm-hmm. And most of that is because of my time in the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
Because like when you learn things in the Marine Corps, you do it at a super baseline fundamental level in the sense that like you don't get a GPS until you master a map and compass.
And everything's done Barney style for a reason.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's after you have mastered those things that you can move on and do other things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way that we need to walk through this as we continue to grow outside of the military, is like learn the foundation of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to be humble in order to do that.
Yep.
And then you can start tinkering with all these toys and stuff. But guess what? If the shit hits the fan and we don't have the ability to have GPS anymore, you've got the map and compass to fall back on. You know what I mean? Like being able to have that in your back pocket to the point where you're like, well, you know what? If this doesn't work out, I can still be successful, and I still have the fundamental, rudimentary abilities and skills to be successful and like eat, feed my face, and survive.
Yep. And that could be as simple as just having consistent work ethic.
Yeah. Because, I mean, if you look at it, the military did such an amazing job of showing you how to be a hard worker and how to perform your task. And I mean, that does translate over. It's not like, you lose that. It does. And like Logan said, you don't want to discredit anybody's credit or in the military, but it's just, I look at it, it's a great piece that I can put on my resume. I'm done with it. I did it. That's it. Like, let's push forward. Yeah, I'm going to use the tools that I was given there to apply to something else. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's done with. Like, I did it. It was awesome. I loved it. That's it. It's done.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the next bigger thing, kind of like what everybody here does. Everybody has a different job, and they're great at it, and we've moved forward, which is amazing. I wish everybody can capture that and be like, all right, I have these tools. I'm going to apply them to a next job and in the next job till I find what I'm looking for.
So we're going to jump into E right now, and that's going to be expect setbacks. And when I say expect setbacks, it's not even, I go through my loser period, which was 2006 to about 2011-ish.
When you say loser period, what do you mean when you say that?
I didn't have the right mentality about what I needed to do to be successful.
Was this immediately after you got out, or?
Well, I mean, so I've watched other veterans go through this, working at Ranger Up and communicating with veterans. I watched them go through the same phase. A lot of them, I just held on to it for a good, 6-7 years. But I lost my thought just now. Jace Louise, Jack Mandaville. What was that question again?
No. Well, you've gone through some stuff, in your period of transition has had so many bumps and bruises, like so many of ours has, but I always look towards that, like often there's like a fundamental thing that where like you reach rock bottom and something happens that like opens your eyes to the direction that you need to go now.
Yeah, and for me I was either unaware or in denial about those things. I went through the phase of excitement that I was 20. The world was my oyster getting out of the Marine Corps, and then I had setbacks. I didn't get jobs that I thought I should have. Then I started getting bitter, and so I went through these different phases of real world stuff happening to me, but me not being able to accept it, and me holding on to that notion that because I'm a veteran, like I'm still the best man for the job, or I'm better at this than other people. So in 2011, when things started mentally changing for me, and it was probably closer to 2010, but even when I was excelling and making progress in the arts, I was still experiencing rejection and everything like that. I had just learned to train my brain to accept it at that point and drive through it. So even now I'm on my own out here trying to, with all the different companies that are paying me to do what I do, I still have things that come in my way. I still have self-doubt and everything like that.
Yeah. Having gone through this much of life, I have come to the understanding, like, you have to embrace stress.
Yeah.
You have to embrace the chaos. You have to know that everything is going to go wrong. Like, Murphy's Law is a thing.
It's just as applicable in the civilian world as it is in the military.
Yeah, exactly. And it's in those moments when you're stressed, you have to be able to look outside of yourself for a moment and take a almost third-party look at, like, okay, what is going on and how do I solve this? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, we're solving problems. Sometimes we're solving mental problems. Sometimes we're solving financial problems, interrelational problems. But life is just one series of solving a bunch of problems.
Yeah.
and you have to be a good problem solver. Those things are associated with stress and with uncomfortableness. And if you don't embrace that, and if you don't expect that, and you're like, you're not going to make it through, and you're not going to be successful, and you're not going to ultimately live the ultimate life that you think that you can live.
You'll be bitter. That's all you'll be. You'll just be an angry guy.
Bitter SOB.
Complaining on the internet about...
Speaking of which, like, we have a very good example of someone who had every opportunity to just say, my situation is shit and I'm giving up. And when people look at you, Crispy, like, all they see is inspiration, because they're like, nobody can complain about anything when they look at you, because you have done and gone through so much and you handle it so well that is so influential to other people. I
mean, I wouldn't say I handled it too well. I mean, there was times where I was just like, oh, this shit sucks. But man, it's just kind of touch back on what you just said, man. Life's going to give you a lot of problems, and it doesn't matter whether it's in combat, whether it's in relationships, whether it's in life, at work, anywhere. I mean, it's really up to us to grab that lesson that's being presented to us and make it into either a positive or a negative. And you can go down that rabbit hole as much as you want, but when you get out of it, you're going to realize you wasted all that time on that stupid thing that you could have fixed on your own and made it into a positive thing. Because at the end of the day, man, like, through every problem that we've had, everything that you go through, if you push hard enough, there is going to be success at the end of that. Like, and I've told many people that. I said, it could be hard for a year, 2, 3, but if you keep pushing back and pushing back, there is going to be something positive and success out of it.
Well, not only that, like, if you're going through something for 2 years, 3 years, like, you're dealing with something, like, you get through that.
Yeah.
That is nothing but a good thing in the future.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the way, I really try and look at things, is like, no, bring on the bad shit.
Yeah.
All that
stuff is necessary.
Bring it on, because every time that I look back on life, the perceived bad things aren't really bad.
No, not at
They're
all.
the things that you use and you grow from.
And he's a prime example. He left the oil field. He left all these jobs, went to go try to do what he's doing now, failed. And then here you are now doing all these amazing things for a bunch of different companies, and you're doing it on your time. You're doing what you love. And ultimately, it sounds cliche or not, but you're doing what you love. The job that you're doing, it's you. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter if I want to say it doesn't. I mean, it matters how much money you make, but at the end of the day, you're happy with what you're doing. Like, it's just, that's what it's about. You're gonna go through a bunch of steps in life that aren't gonna be great, but at the end of the day, here you are doing what you love, and you finally saw the light, and you're like, hey, I'm doing it, I'm living it. And I think a lot of guys that are out there struggling with whatever job or the next step that they want to take after the military, like, you got to understand it's going to be hard at first, but keep pushing through, man. Reach out to people, ask for advice. Like, if you want to be a writer, hit up Jack. He can probably let you know a bunch of stuff that he went through that you should expect, but it's going to get better.
Yeah, that reminds me, I don't know why I thought about this from what you said, but reaching out. So Jared did a TED Talk, I think it was a couple years ago, 3 years ago, up in Seattle, and it was one of the local TED Talks.
TEDx.
And the thing that sticks with me that Jared said was that he said every day he would send an email to someone that he didn't know, someone outside of his bubble that he was interested in, wanted to learn from, wanted to work with, like, every day. Like, he made it a habit to do that. And I think that that's super important, because when you're doing that, you're identifying yourself.
Yeah.
When you do that, when you're like, oh, me and this person's relationship is this, and the more self-identity that we have, the more awareness of where we're at in life, the better.
Yeah, that's a really good approach
I'm surprised I'm learning something from Jared.
See? Yeah, that guy's got incredible work ethic.
Oh man,
which is actually the R in loser, more or less.
Yes. Roll up your sleeves and go to work.
Simple. I fucking love it.
Yeah.
Simple.
Yeah. So a big reason, or this is weird for me to admit, I don't do self-help stuff. If I see quotes, like inspirational quotes on the internet, I don't even look at them. I've never read a self-help book or anything like that. But I read a book it was in 2011, I believe, called The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. He wrote Gates of Fire, Legend of Bagger Vance.
We used to we called them read-in feeds in the Marines. So like I remember specifically we're at 29 Palms doing Mojave, and which is like the desert training that you do for 3 weeks right before you deploy. They basically stick you in the worst possible scenario and then go deploy.
Yeah.
that's
And,
awesome.
yeah.
I was in Germany when it was snowing, doing training to go to Iraq. So yeah, that was great.
Yeah, makes total sense.
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
But we would do these things called read-in feeds where we would just it was super elementary, man. We would sit in a circle, we would eat our MREs, and we would read Stephen Pressfield.
Oh my
because,
God.
it's so beautiful.
That's awesome.
That guy can take any type of thing that actually happened, but where the records aren't good, where people have a basic understanding of what happened, and he can recreate history in the most exciting way.
Yeah, if you need to pick up a good read or you just want a book to like gravitate towards, I think Gates of Fire is probably,
If you're gonna read Stephen Pressfield, that's one.
Yeah, Gates of Fire is just like,
well, like especially like in the military, that's every single dude's.
It really is, but the way that he does it is so eloquent, and like it puts you there, and it feels like he was there.
Yeah,
like, he's just documenting it.
Yeah,
I think historical fiction is typically
that would be the genre he's in, and most of his
Audible?
books fall into the historical genre realm, with the exception of The War of Art. Technically, it would fall into self-help. Maybe I don't consider it that myself. That book kicked my ass. It really made me look at myself in a way I'd never looked at myself. It was so humbling, because at that point I had taken being a writer very seriously. So knowing that that's what I wanted, and knowing all the mistakes, this book having to expose all the mistakes I had leading up, and me realizing I had to make a monumental change in my lifestyle, not just my mental way of thinking, but the way that my work ethic and everything like that changed me. And his follow-up book was Do the Work. They all kind of blend together in some of the messaging, but doing the work is the most important part. And I'll say specifically, again, as someone who quote unquote works in the arts, I don't live like, I like to party and stuff like anybody else, but I don't have a crazy extravagant lifestyle. It's not what you imagine with artists. If you're successful artists, wake up at a reasonable time in the morning, they have their cup of coffee, they have a morning routine, then they go to work. They work for a certain amount of hours a day. I mean, 8 hours a day is what we would consider in our society a healthy amount of hours a day. They work for 8 hours a day. Even when they don't want to work, you force yourself to work. There's days where I always joke with my job. I spend 50% of my day pacing around trying to think of an idea.
I've seen it.
It sounds like that's wasted time, but that's me forcing my brain to come up with something so I can execute on it. And then I have to execute on it. And then I have to do the whole social media posting aspect of it. And then after that, I have to engage with people. So it's work. And you have to look at it as a job. Even if you're in the arts, you have to look at it like you're going to your oil field job and you're commuting and you're going to be turning wrenches all day on a roustabout truck. And then when your day's done, you eliminate your day and you try to wind down from that day like normal people do. And then you go to bed at a reasonable time. Omar hasn't seen that part of me because I've been crashed on his couch for the last week. I've been in a different mode, but yeah.
Well, I think so. Dave just highlighted part of your article, and I think it wraps everything up pretty well. And it's don't fall into the post-service trap in which you become a professional veteran.
Oh yeah.
And I'm going to parlay that with.
That's another subject.
Yeah, that doesn't need to be expanded on. But I want to look at the way that I'm assuming you helped write your own bio at the bottom.
Yeah.
There, but so the thing that sticks out to me there is his only real love outside of his work opportunities is falling asleep to Netflix. When I read that, Jack, you don't shut it off.
No,
that's what I think we need to get over as a society is like work shouldn't be a bad 4-letter word. Work should be synonymous with life.
Yes.
If you are in a typical 9 to 5 and you watch the clock all day, like you're wrong. Maybe you're doing that now because you know what is down the road, but like if you're stuck in that, you're wrong.
Yeah.
You need to put everything you have into what you want to do in life. Like I don't shut it off.
Yeah.
This is my life and I don't want to live any other way. And I think that 3 of us here are like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That thing about me falling asleep to Netflix is I pretty much go for the most part until it's time to go to sleep. So that's my release. That's like my endorphin. Whether I've had a couple drinks or maybe sometimes rarely I can quit working at like 8 p.m. or whatever. That's my true wind down. That's my true way of kind of ending work for the day. And then I conk out and then I start again the next morning.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I will parlay that with saying you need to find your release. Whatever that is. If it is watching Netflix.
I get to do what I love. So it's Netflix. Yeah. It's dumbing myself down. Yeah.
Hunting, bro.
Or drawing or reading a book, like doing something fidgety with your hands, playing with Legos, whatever that is. You do, regardless of your profession, you do need to shut it off for a little bit and let your brain rest. And you need sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is something that we all have struggled with at some point or another.
That's great. He touched on it because man, for the longest time when I first started, I couldn't shut it off. It was constant. Like, I need to do something next. I need to do this, and I need to put out this content, and I need to do all this stuff. And it got to a point where I was like, I'm getting worked out. Like this is not going anywhere. It's still going to be there when I wake up tomorrow. So, kind of step back and realize that it's there are a couple of many hours that I do of the day. Turn it off. And focus in on family and loved ones and all that stuff. And my outlet is hunting. Like I think everybody even knows that, and they're probably tired of hearing it. But that's my outlet. When I shut it off, like hunting is my Netflix.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I think that's it. Jack, thank you so much for coming on and sharing.
Yeah,
and,
thanks for having me, guys.
Tell the people where they can find you at.
I'm on most social media platforms. Just search me up under Jack Mandaville on Facebook. I'm Jack Mandaville on Twitter and Instagram. JackMandaville. If you have any questions for me, email me at jack.mandaville, Mandaville @gmail.com. May I say one thing?
Dude, go away.
Speaking of veteran transition,
yes.
This event is BlackRifle Coffee is actually one of the sponsors. And as far as I know, Evan and Jared have committed to it. But we're going to be putting on an event here in San Antonio on September 19th. It's called Burbiz. Right now we got a lot of people coming, and it's going to be about 2 hours. Free liquor, free booze. If you want to know more about it, it's in in my bio link, in the link in my bio on Instagram. But it's basically it's a drinking event with an emphasis on networking. But this is for whether you're a newly transitioning veteran, whether you're active duty and about to get out, or whether you've been out for a while. There's going to be a mix of those people. There's going to be a mix of established entrepreneurs and business owners there too, that if you want to pick their brain or build a relationship with them, basically you're going to have access to everyone that's going to be there, people who know what they're doing in certain arenas, and it's going to be a fun night.
I'm going.
Awesome.
Yes, you are.
I am going too.
Yeah. And you know who else is going, who I really enjoy? And what I really enjoy about him is he is in real life he's actually crazier in real life than he is on the internet. I'm not going to say his name, but Angry Cops. You ever seen his stuff?
Yep.
Yeah, that guy's crazier in real life than he is on the internet.
Jeez.
Well, that's it. Thank you, guys. Launch Code will be back.
Yep.